You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission. Welcome to this special edition of the On Mission podcast. Today we are talking to Global Encounters Team Mexico, and this is what we're going to call another side mission as we take a brief departure from our normal format and talk about just a special event. And so I have the Morrises here. They had the honor of leading the team, and also Morgan, who was one of the team members, along with several others. And so I'm very anxious to hear about your experience. Of course, earlier in the summer, I had the opportunity to go with the team to Kyrgyzstan, and our Global Encounters program is a pretty significant part of the cultural outreach, the missions outreach for Maranatha, and we have lots of different kinds of trips that we try to plan each year. This last year we had 4 trips. Kyrgyzstan, of course, which was a soccer ministry opportunity, kind of unusual format. We had a volleyball ministry format in Grand Cayman Islands that the volleyball team had the opportunity to go with. And earlier in the year, the Global Encounters team with the nursing students went to Kosovo for medical missions. And so really this Mexico trip was more of a English as a second language format, but really with a gospel emphasis. And so we were really thankful for that opportunity. And I'm personally very thankful for your leadership. So thank you so much for being willing to do that and do it so well. I know the students really benefited from that as well. But as we get going, I'm reminded this trip didn't start out as Team Mexico, did it? You kind of ended up in Mexico. You were planning to go somewhere altogether different, weren't you?
We were. We had a different site all planned out, but the Lord really closed the doors to that one, and it was discouraging. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to lie.
No, I think that's an important lesson to talk about.
But then the Lord just clearly opened the doors for us to go to Mexico, and one of the most amazing things was we did not know this until we were there. They had actually been praying for over a year. Should we start English as a second language as an outreach opportunity? And then it was very obvious why the Lord had closed the door to the other spot and moved us to Mexico. And if it's okay, I'm going to introduce you to our amazing team because they were absolutely fabulous. And what I love about this crew is they are really they're a cross-section of the student body at Maranatha because Katie and Aaron are 2 institute students. Mm-hmm. Ben is in exercise science. Ashley and Peter are in the Bible department, and Peter's a missions major. Morgan, who's with us today, is a nursing student. Abby and Zuri are both ed majors, and Jono is in humanities. And so it's just really, it was wonderful how God brought this unique group together. And I'm telling you, we had zero fights.
And they are very diverse people.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at, you got athletes, you got choir members, you've got medical people. I mean, this is a really eclectic collection of students, isn't it?
And God just blended them together in an amazing way, and they ended up just having an absolutely fabulous ministry the entire time they were down there.
And one of the neat things about it is these were the kids that said, okay, we're not going to the original place that we wanted to go to. And maybe Mexico didn't have, the flashy appeal that the other place had. But when Mexico opened up, they were, hey, this is about a mission trip. This is about learning. This is about what God wants us to learn and do. Yeah. And so I'm just so glad that these were the kids that went because they were perfect.
Well, I'm reminded of Paul's missionary journeys that over and over again he would say, I wanted to go over here and I had this plan developing, but the Lord shut that door. And I always, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, there was more to that story. He decided not to throw anybody under the bus. He just said, well, the Lord made it clear to me that was not what we were to do right now. And he just graciously accepted another open door that God did. And he said, well, maybe the Lord will do something. Were you part of that original team thinking about, okay, we're going somewhere else, and now what was your thought process as you found out that wasn't going to happen?
I was basically just on board to go anywhere. I've always been interested in missions, and so when all the students got up and Dr. Love was presenting the missions thing, I wanted to go somewhere and be a part of something like that. So Mexico, Dominican Republic, I was in for it.
You didn't care which one it was, whatever it was, you were like, let's go.
Yeah.
Now, spoiler alert to the end here, but now that you've done it, is that like it? We're not doing this ever again? Or are you like, next year, where are we going?
As many as
Not
I
with the
can go.
Morrises.
All right, let's go.
I would love to.
Not with the Morrises.
They were my family there. It was awesome.
Well, you did have a fantastic team. And tell us a little bit about where you were going in Mexico.
So Chiapas is the southernmost state of Mexico. It borders Guatemala. And the capital city and the largest city in Chiapas is Tuxtla Gutierrez.
Easy for you to say.
Indeed. Indeed. That's my California Spanglish.
Oh, okay.
And my brother Dan Morris has been a missionary there for the last 45 years. And so God called him, obviously many years ago to missions. And he started out his first 2 years in Querétaro, which is in Mexico City. And then God connected him with a doctor who invited him to come down to Tuxtla and start a local church. And the two of them together really formed the nucleus that really started that ministry 43 years ago. And so Tuxtla is a very large city. It's 1 million people.
Oh, wow.
It's surrounded by mountains, and there's a break in the mountains, and that is where the Sumidero Canyon is.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful.
Originally, it was just a canyon, and then the Mexican government realized what they needed was a large electrical power plant. So they built a dam, and it created a fairly significant river and then a lake at the end. And then that power plant services basically all of southern Mexico and actually reaches further north even that. So my brother Dan has been there, and he started a church pretty much from scratch. And now today on a Sunday, they'd have about 600 people. And he and his wife and kids.
Big church, yeah.
And just,
Spanish
they've got
speaking.
a Christian school, a 3-story building with classrooms. He's also started a Bible Institute. And God has richly blessed the ministry.
Now, Morgan, you're from West Virginia. Do you speak Spanish?
No, I speak hillbilly.
Oh, boy. Okay. Okay. I'm sure they have hillbillies in Mexico probably, too, so somebody you can relate to. But did you find it hard to get around or hard to connect with people, or did most people seem pretty friendly and easy to connect with?
Yeah, they were really friendly. I mean, most of the time we were with church people, with fellow Christians, and there's just a spirit there that goes past the language, and you can just be with each other and just have that friendship. You don't really need to speak. And we had communicators, so we did through that.
Yeah. We were able to use our phones and like the Google Lens, where you can live translate signs, and even the PowerPoints in church, like they're singing songs we don't know, so we're get a very rough English translation. Oh, I can agree to that. Okay, good. We'll hum along or whatever. But it is odd though. I mean, not odd. What's the right word? It's surprising the fellowship you have with other believers, even though you can't necessarily communicate in the same language.
And it really was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a hallmark of that particular ministry. Yes, they love to be together, and he actually constructed the building so that they could have fellowship, large fellowship gatherings, and they just love it, and they do it all the time.
And our students just did a fabulous job of jumping right in, being engaged. Morgan's right. Of the team, only 2 spoke Spanish.
Oh.
So it's not the type of mission trip where you have to be very fluent, because your goal is to teach English, right? But Zuri was fabulous, and Abby spoke Spanish as well. So we had 2 of our own team.
That's good.
But yes.
And I think the people there, they made it really easy to engage. They made it feel like home.
Very much so.
Did you stay in a hotel, or what were your accommodations?
So not very far away from the church was a hotel, and I thought it was lovely. Our rooms were very nice. It was very modern.
You had
It
air
had a
conditioning?
pool. It had air conditioning.
A pool? Oh, wow.
It
We
had
had a pool also in Kyrgyzstan at one point. There was no water in the pool, but there maybe had been
This
at
one
some
had
point.
water. We were a little concerned about the electrical lights that were a little close to the water.
Oh,
So, but
just
it's
that little
Mexico.
element of danger makes it exciting, you know.
There was a restaurant which we ate all of our breakfasts in, and a couple of dinners.
Nice to
and
have some consistency.
It was
Yeah.
lovely,
Good.
and it was.
But you
we
felt
were good.
you were safe and everything was fine. I mean,
Yes.
that's really paramount when we go around the world. There's always an element of uncertainty, but you need to be careful about where you go. And people hear stories and they kind of generalize to an entire country or an entire region. And if you're careful, there's plenty of ways to travel outside the United States and be safe and see what God's doing. That's really the main thing.
we gave them some rules. Don't go walking off
Yeah.
by yourself.
Yeah, don't go
And
walking off, Morgan. Come on.
No one ever really did.
I wasn't
They cooperated quite well.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good.
So where did you go from there? You had the ministry in the church, but do they have a school there, or was it a community school that you worked in, or how did that work?
Yes. So we were able to, we sang in the church on one Sunday, and
Oh.
Dwayne preached through a translator. That was wonderful. We also had an opportunity we had worked on a silent drama here, and that was really powerful because obviously it's silent,
Yeah.
but it goes from creation through the fall, through Christ's death, and it's impactful because they can understand it all. We were able to
Yeah.
do that out in a park one day,
Really?
and then
We had about 100.
Did your team
people
members
gathered around.
get into it?
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Because
They
you
were
can't
good.
just like halfway those kinds
they
of
were
things.
fabulous.
You've got to buy in.
They were so good. They were so
Yeah.
good.
Oh, that's good.
But on the first day that we went then to the school, what was fun was we took all our crafts, we took a lot of things, and we took sidewalk chalk. And that was kind of our icebreaker. If you're in education, you know that a great thing to do is to try to just work with the little, because they didn't know us. I mean, who are these gringos? And they had never seen sidewalk chalk. They didn't know what it was. So we began drawing, and they just were so animated. And then one of the precious church members thought it was never going to come off.
Uh-oh.
And they came over and began to kind of scold us. What are you doing? You know, in Spanish, you're vandalizing our property, but we're not. So we had to show them, no, all it takes is water. But that was just such a, you know, we take those things for granted that we can go to Walmart and buy sidewalk chalk. And,
Yeah.
you know, but as was mentioned, one of our biggest ministries
to
there
focus,
was
really.
the English as a second language. And
Okay.
so every morning we had 52 children. And we trained our students, and they all were responsible for a certain group. Table. Zuri was our primary translator, so I did a lot of the teaching, and then Zuri would translate, and that was wonderful. And the children were just precious. You know, children, I love the verse, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not.
Yeah.
For of such is the kingdom of heaven. And that was, you know, it was just a thrill to work with these precious, precious individuals. And again, our team just loved on them, did a fabulous job. Again, they were not all ed majors, but this is a ministry where you're using your language as an inroad, and our goal was to make relationships, to help build those relationships also for the missionaries, and we can go more into that, but as an opportunity for the missionaries to reach out and meet these families and these people. So that was in the morning.
What are your thoughts about, just let's pause there for a minute. What are your thoughts about ESL as ministry? And because obviously there are principles of this concept that must translate to any language, because we had the same thing a few years ago in Indonesia, right? Which very different language structure, and yet some of your students came with us, did their practicum, you know, doing ESL work there. You guys are doing this now in Mexico, and yet there's another reason, obviously, why we want to do a valuable thing in teaching English, but then couple that together with gospel outreach. And I wonder, I mean, I know that's a big part of one of the programs that you oversee, and I wonder if you could kind of speak to that as really a useful ministry tool.
Absolutely. The same way we send nursing teams out and they can use medicine as a means by which they might come in contact with someone that perhaps they never would. And so their ability to help them physically affords them opportunities to meet these people and then share the gospel.
Yeah.
For me, that's how I view ESL as a ministry, because you're exactly right. I want to teach them. I want to help them understand a language. But most importantly, I want to see them in heaven someday.
Yeah.
And if this is the connective point that will bring these people to this church, and we'll share a little bit more of a story when we talk about the radio station. But yeah, to know that they had been praying for over a year, God, should we use English as a second language to reach out? Yeah. And we're just a tiny cog in that wheel. But people down there want to learn English. It's a global language. It's not that we're better than anyone else. It's just our language that people want to learn as a means to communicate, as a means to do business, as a means to perhaps come to America and visit family that's here. It's a useful item. And again, our students just really quickly picked up on the pedagogy of how to do it, and they did fabulous with them, and the students loved. The students, meaning the little Mexican children, loved and adored our Maranatha students, who did a fabulous job just reaching out through the use of teaching English as a second language.
So is that a tool, is that a program just for education majors, or do you recommend that really for anybody who wants to put that kind of tool in their toolbox for the Lord to use later in life and wherever he might open the door?
I think that's a fabulous question, and my heartbeat is anyone can use this, whether God calls you to the mission field overseas or God calls you to the mission field of Watertown, Wisconsin. It is an outreach. We have an ESL class at our church, and we just had 2 new visitors 2 days ago, both of them from Nicaragua. When would I ever have the opportunity to interact with somebody in Nicaragua? I live in Watertown, Wisconsin.
Long ways away.
Right. But they want to learn English.
Yep.
And so they will show up, and it's just an opportunity then for us to, we show them our love for them, and by doing so then I always express to my students, I love you, I care for you, because I know my God loves you and my God cares for you. And that oftentimes will cause them to just sit up and think that through. And here in Watertown, we give them all English, Spanish Bibles.
Oh, yeah.
We, it is our goal, our primary goal is to see them in heaven.
Yes. The other thing is you can go to Mexico and be a church planner, learn how to speak Spanish and plant a local church. And many have done it, and we're very thankful for that ministry. But not every country in the world can an American, or perhaps anybody else, go to that country and stay there and start a local church, because those are closed countries. But a lot of those closed countries are not closed to English as a second language.
Yeah.
And so in some ways what you have here is an opportunity to penetrate a closed country,
Right.
whereby you can get in, establish relationships, share the gospel, and perhaps actually start a church, at least a fellowship, a Bible study, and thereby fulfill the Great Commission that God has given to us.
Right.
And so...
And be welcomed in.
Yeah.
In some of these places where you would otherwise be prohibited to go.
Yes.
Maybe even paid.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Morgan, you're a nursing major, and yet you were kind of engaged in an education thing, right? An TESOL deal. How did you feel like you were able to pick that up and put it to use? And did you feel like you were effective at all with that and connecting with the students, or did you always feel like a fish out of water, or what was it like kind of trying to be the student involved in that?
Yeah, for when we were going through it the first week, and we were all brought in, they were like, so this is what we're going to do. Originally it was Dominican Republic, so they were kind of explaining
The first week of the college semester that you met here, you mean?
Yes.
Okay,
the group was, we were here at MBU, and they were like, this is what we're going to do in the next 6 months. And I was like, that sounds terrifying. I am not a teacher. That's kind of, but...
so you got a crash course over the next 6 months. Okay.
But by the end of it, they were like, we're going to go day by day, and we're going to explain this. And really, Mrs. Morris, her teaching us, and it came together, which I was like, how in the world? But that week it did not feel like super terrifying like it did. And the kids were really sweet, and we were able to just get to know each other through that.
That's awesome. And honestly, from a ministry standpoint, there needs to be some competence that comes along with ministry. Like if we're going to make promises and we're going to go into a country and say we're going to do something here that's beneficial, we better deliver on that promise.
Absolutely.
It's not that that's a sham or a pretext. We really are delivering value
Without
if we're
question.
prepared and we're willing and we actually come in and do that. And then as we do that, obviously we are who we are and we want to aggressively share the gospel. So I just think that's a great sort of takeaway from this whole thing, is because that'll translate into any culture or any country that God opened the door for you to go to, is to say, listen, what are the tools that I can use, whether it's soccer, volleyball, ESL, or whatever other thing it is that opens that door.
And can I just say, I totally affirm your statement. It needs to be done with excellence.
Yeah.
Because if we are going to reflect Christ and we go in and we are lazy or ineffective teachers, I don't know what will draw them to my Savior if I myself am not reflecting him through excellence. It's not perfection. There's a difference between perfection and really striving to be prepared. And I credit these students. They prepared and worked, and they were effective.
They really did. So Morgan's sitting at a table, surrounded by 6, maybe 8 Mexican students. How old were your students again?
There was one who was 12, but they were mainly junior high.
Junior high. And so Mrs. Morris is doing the alphabet, or she's doing, let's say,
Days of the week.
vocabulary. And so what would you be doing right then as you're going through it?
Sometimes we would sing the songs, and we would get together at our own table, and a lot of the kids at my table knew some English, so they might ask harder questions and that they couldn't necessarily stop the class to ask the teacher. And
You're like their resident expert, you know.
Yes.
Hey, now, why do you do it this way or that way? And there's so many strange things about English that, native speakers don't even think about. We just do it automatically. I remember in Indonesia, I was playing your part, just one of the little helpers in the group. I had 8 or 9 Indonesian college students who were the same way. And she goes through this thing about how we order our adjectives if we have multiple adjectives. And I remember I'm sitting there with the Indonesian kids going, we do? Like it's color, size, location, whatever the flow of it is. I couldn't even tell you what it is because we just do it naturally.
Right.
And if you do it wrong, it sounds really weird to us. But how in the world would you ever teach that to a second language learner? So I was learning right along with them. I thought I learned things about grammar I hadn't thought about since 4th grade,
The way that Angela has it arranged, if they just follow her lead, which is really what you're doing the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you're listening for pronunciation, let's say, and making sure that they get as close as they can. But
and if they can hear it from you saying it correctly, and imagine if you were doing it the other way, when you hear somebody say something in a foreign language, you're just mimicking the sounds until you have a comprehension of why they sound the way they do. So that's a really valuable thing for team members, even if they don't have the professional certifications that go along with that kind of training. So.
But we needed each of them because, like he said, I would be up front. And we were blessed. I had a PowerPoint. I had everything. But each team member had his or her own table that they were at and their group, and they studied with that group all week. And it was really neat to see how I had placed one person. I placed Abby with the kindergartners because Abby is an L-Ed. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put you at the youngest table. And then everyone else, I just said, go choose a table. And it was really wonderful to see how God put I'm not kidding, each of our students at the specific table where they were most needed. And then they stayed with that crew all week. And if I had done it, I would have messed up, not knowing the children. God knew. And each of our MBU students found the right table, and then that was their crew for the week. It was really neat. It was really neat.
So that was more in the morning time?
That was in the morning.
And then what was your afternoon? What would that look like?
In the afternoon, we got to experience a little bit of the culture.
Look at that pot.
I know. They were amazing cooks. But it was so fun to go out and see. They were so precious because they would do those from scratch every day. I mean, they were unbelievable at accomplishing things, and we were well fed. And then sometimes in the afternoon, we're able to go just see culture, because I appreciate Dr. Love. I remember he said to us, you've got to let them experience culture. Don't just have them in the classroom. So we would take some time, and that was Morgan. I think
Did you
brought
buy that?
I did.
Oh, good. You weren't just trying it on, huh?
Yep.
Okay. You should have wore it today. I mean,
Right.
I should have. It
nice.
was a little chilly,
Come on.
too.
When
Did you
go
get a sombrero?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
When you go shopping in Mexico, it is so beautiful because they are
So
so
colorful.
colorful.
Yeah.
Incredibly colorful.
Yes.
So that would be kind of the afternoon. And
Was
then,
it really hot? I mean, what time? You were there in June, right?
May.
May, end of May. Okay.
It was hot. It was bearable.
Yeah. We had air conditioning, so we were blessed.
Now, this is southern Mexico, so is this really as much of a touristy kind of an area, or did you feel like this was really the authentic?
These pictures are of a very important tourist area called San Cristobal de las Casas, which is actually in the mountains, about a 45-minute drive up from Tuxtla, where we were. And actually, it was quite cool there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, did we get hail?
One night we were in the church, and it was so cold, and we just looked up, and they had open windows, and these little pebbles are just flying through the windows. Yeah.
You're like,
So
am I
we
in
did have some
Wisconsin?
cool
What's
weather.
happening?
But
That's
San
funny.
Cristobal is a very popular place that a lot of tourists go, and so they have a market kind of geared toward tourists there.
And then Danny would also take us to some of his various, what would we call it, the other churches that he was planting. So we were primarily located in the main church, but then he was very missions minded and had several satellite churches. That he wanted to become self-sustaining.
That the main church and the kind of the primary church group has really planted a bunch of other churches in that region. I mean, he's been there for 45 years and been really effective in growing it. It wasn't that way when he got there.
No.
But over the years, the Lord has really blessed.
So Dan wanted to obviously start a church and train his people to reach out. And they started Saturday night Bible studies in their various communities. And that's really how the church grew. People would come to church on Sunday, having been with his people on Saturday. Once he got his people to where they had about, I would say, 300 in the church, then he started training his people. Now, what would it be if we started to reach out to other local communities? And he trained teams of like 6 to 10 people to go out into another community to start another church. And so now, over a period of 45 years, along with the church up in San Cristobal, they've started about 20 other churches.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So
that
first Sunday we got to visit 3
Right.
of the satellites.
And one of our team members at the end, it was neat. We had team meetings every night. And one of the team members said, what struck me was, because we visited several of these other churches, what if that one family had never come? Now, certainly God could have sent someone else. But the point was, Danny and Debbie were willing to follow God's call.
Yeah.
And hundreds of lives have been impacted. And it was...
Generationally.
Yes.
Yes.
But it was very difficult. Morgan remembers a story that the missionary's wife told.
There were several stories. I mean, it wasn't easy for them because when they first showed up, that area was very rural. Like, it's a huge city now, but it wasn't 45 years ago. And Mrs. Morris, the missionary's wife.
I was short Mrs. Morris, and she was tall Mrs. Morris.
Mrs. Debbie Morris.
Okay.
She was telling a story about when she had her kids and she was giving them baths. She would have to pick worms out of their hair because the water was just not good. I mean, it wasn't a city.
Right.
They said, you know what, this is where God called us to be. You guys were able to go down there and stay in an air-conditioned hotel with a pool and have breakfast served every morning, and you know, they didn't have any of that.
They had nothing like that.
And they stuck it out.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people would have seen that and been like, first sign of a worm, I'm going home. You know, this is not the way it's going to be. But they saw it through, and God's been good. But you guys got to reap the fruit of that in some ways. And I'm sure it's inspiring to say, man, what am I felt that way when we started hearing stories about translating the Bible for the first time into their language and things like that. I thought, man, what am I doing in my life? you know, I need to really, open my eyes to some things God could do. And it's a challenge to us to be more open and reflective about, well, how might the Lord be able to use me? And not necessarily to get the acclaim, obviously. Your brother's not that way, but just to see the Lord work.
And the other thing you appreciate is whether you're in Mexico and you meet believers, they're your brothers and sisters in Christ. We've been in Asia and met our brothers and sisters in Christ in Asia. We've been in Africa and met our brothers and sisters in Christ. And you really begin to appreciate they're doing their Christian life in that culture and that experience, and it has unique challenges. And some ways they face things that we don't face. And you really begin to appreciate, wow, that's what doing Christianity really needs to look like. And it's an incredible challenge for our own lives.
You know, I wonder if there's some lessons there. We hear a lot in our culture these days about diversity, and they mean something very different than what you're talking about. And they'll say things like diversity is our strength, and I've always kind of wondered what in the world people mean by that. Because really, it's almost in spite of our diversity, it's the unity that we have that's our strength.
Absolutely.
And that unity comes from common faith in one God that overall all cultures and differences, and we can celebrate and learn about and be curious about those differences, those distinctions. But to dwell on those is to divide us and to separate us, rather than to celebrate really the intense unity that we have around the gospel.
And that's just absolutely thrilling. And when you see what your brothers and sisters in Christ are going through, it just makes you realize, wow, Lord, I need to be faithful.
Yeah, for sure.
To be faithful.
Because some of the satellite churches were still pretty rural, very rural, and they're, to call it a church building, I mean, one was still in a tent. One was just a room slightly bigger than this room. I mean, really not very big. And but Danny took us early on, and you'll have to correct me if I tell this story wrong. Danny wanted to put up, he really is a visionary, and he wanted to put up a radio tower so that he could share the gospel even more effectively. And they were praying and praying, where can we put up a radio tower? He needed to put it up high. He knew that. I have to go somewhere high in Tuxtla. He starts sharing this. And this particular family, after church one night, came forward and said, we know where you need to put that up. You need to put it in our house. Their house was 2 rooms. We visited the house.
We did.
Tiny.
Yeah.
They gave 1 room for the radio.
The finished room.
The nice room.
The nice room. They gave to the radio
No,
station.
it wasn't like this. They have since. So Danny's gone in. Danny's very electrically minded. He's very techie. He has
just like you, Dr. Morris.
Yeah.
Maybe he got that
Maybe
He has soundproofed it. The equipment's up there, but we went on the roof of their house, and you can see it's just that. That's it. They literally gave half of their house to spread the gospel. And walking through it, their kitchen is probably half the size of this. That's a house, And so over time, Danny was able to raise some money, and he kind of built another room for them. They did everything in the one room. They slept in that room. They ate in that room. It was their living room. They literally gave half their house. So we're there, and Danny is showing us this, and we're just dumbfounded at the absolute sacrifice of this precious family. And he says, wait a minute, you guys. And we always took 2 Suburbans everywhere. They drove us everywhere in 2 Suburbans. We kind of looked like CIA. Not really. But
you got out.
Right.
Ben Bishop gets out. He does not look like the CIA.
No.
So Danny says, hey, I'm going to do an announcement about the ESL class. Go get in your Suburbans. So we all pile back into the Suburbans, turn on the radios, and he kind of pulls the music down, and he gets on and starts announcing the ESL class, and we're hearing it. Now,
That's cool.
Keep in mind, they've been praying for a year about this, and then the people giving them this room was, what, like 15, 20 years ago?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is
All the preparation.
all that came to this. And then one of the nights of ESL class, and at night then, we did more adult classes that we taught. But one of the ladies came up to me at the end, and I said, are you a member of this church? Because we knew that not everyone. So in the morning we had 52 kids. At night we would have, the lowest night was 40. The highest night was we had 60 adults. And she said, no, I don't go to this church. And I said, through the translator, how did you know about this? Did someone invite you? I heard it over the radio.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, wow, there's a full circle for you. It was.
Well, that radio station's going to reach 1 million people plus.
Yes, it reaches the entire valley.
Yeah. And so the sacrifice of that family was with that in mind, I'm sure, to say, look at what we're able to do by just giving up one room in our house and reach 1 million people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was.
Morgan, you were there. It was very rural.
And they're so joyful and they're so excited about it. I mean, they don't care to give up their room, and it was a testimony just to be around them.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're like, that one room in the back has got some frayed carpet, and it's just, unsightly, and somebody needs to do something about that.
Right.
And then we think, maybe we need to take another
What's great is,
perspective on that.
Years ago, the guy drove by, and he's talking with my brother. He's from way up in northern Mexico. And after spending a couple days with him, he says, hey, I have this radio tower. Could you use it?
Oh, my goodness.
Like, well, yes, I've been praying about starting a radio station. Okay, well, I'll put it on the truck and drive it down. And that was their first radio tower.
It was amazing
It's
how
just
many
an incredible
things
story.
Danny prayed in.
God opened the door.
It just.
I don't know what it is about radio stations and crazy stories, but I've got more crazy radio station stories from my Christian Law Association days than almost any other topic. That's awesome.
Very true. It was remarkable.
It was just really fabulous.
Yeah.
So
To
tell
see
me
their
about some of
sacrifice.
the highlights, some of the people that you met, some of the cultural things that stood out to you.
Boy, I think I remember going to, I think this is a picture from the church in San Cristobal. Is that correct?
Is this San Cristobal? I'm
I
not
think
sure.
so. This was one of the most.
This is one of the satellites.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who you saw the picture of them cooking for us. There were maybe, what Danny would do is when people started coming from quite a distance, he would pray and pray and pray, and then he would, after he felt that they were at a point of being able to lead, he would say to them,
mature, yeah.
I think you need to start a church in your own area. And so here they're coming to an established church of 600, with a building that has been built over years and years and years, right?
Right.
And they're willing then to say, we've got to take the gospel to our own area. And that's another sacrifice. I think, would I be willing to leave Calvary? I love Calvary. I'm comfortable there. I love the ministry. To go to some little place because there's just nothing there for those people. It's a lot of, just.
Well, I don't think the Christian life was intended to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
And yet there's nothing more human than to seek comfort in the status quo.
Yeah.
And so these kinds of trips are a way to sort of remind us that we're pilgrims, not residents.
Right.
We're aliens. We're not citizens in this world, but
Right.
in the next. And, that's what your brother's trying to tell those folks is, listen, you've come, you've received the gospel, you've been discipled, you've been trained. Now it's time for you to step into leadership. And that's a really natural thing. That's kind of what you guys are doing with the students as well, is saying, hey, we're here, we're supporting you, but now it's your turn, and you're never going to feel ready. Like that first actual nursing task that you do as a registered nurse someday, you're going into your sophomore year, so you got a few more years of preparation. Don't try this tomorrow, okay? But that first time you walk in and do that, you're going to be like, I feel like such a pretender, I feel like an imposter, but you're well prepared, and you got to step up and just start doing it. And the same thing in ministry too, right? I mean, that's the whole point of servant leadership, is developing disciples that will themselves become disciple makers.
Absolutely. What's unique is you think, okay, well, it's Mexico and it's southern Mexico, so everything's going to be maybe rural and backwards. But when we got to the church, it's very modern and nice.
Yeah.
You might see a church like that somewhere in the United States. And they have, 600 voices there that are singing hymns, and they have a choir, and they have an orchestra and a lovely piano. And so this is a serious ministry, and it's wonderful. And then my brother comes to them and says, will you give up this to stay in your own community, and we'll try to help you build a cement block building. And it'll be you and maybe 10 other people, but you need to reach your community with the gospel.
Yeah.
And to see them happily say, yes, we'll do that.
Oof.
That is absolutely
20
thrilling.
times over he repeated that. Yeah, it still is.
That's thrilling.
Right.
I don't think you can even achieve that sort of thing until you have proven that you're there for the long haul yourself.
Absolutely.
His longevity is probably what gives him the platform to be able to even consider making that request. Interesting. So what else, stands out to you?
We
What do you
haven't
want to
talked
tell us?
very much about the evening. You did a little bit there. The evening ESL?
You mean the adult ESL?
Right.
That was it was wonderful. We broke that. We would start together as a group, and then Dwayne would take the advanced. So we took down curriculum for. You go and you're kind of not sure where anyone's going to be at.
What are they going to be able to do?
Exactly.
So we told our students, and they were so good and willing, but we said, okay, you're going to get one suitcase for you, and then we get a suitcase. And it was we had suitcases. We did arts and crafts every day with the children, because you got to do arts and crafts, right?
That was pretty fun.
And then we would do songs and everything like that. And then we just had a whole thing of curriculum, because I didn't know where everyone was going to be. So then we had curriculum. Dwayne would take the advanced students, and he'd go work with them, and they could speak English fairly effectively. You were working more just deeper level.
It was more developmental, unique things that maybe are true in English that wouldn't be true in Spanish.
And then I had the adults, and I literally was repeating the lesson I had done in the morning with the children. We're learning the alphabet, and we're learning numbers. They were just at ground zero. But again, with the whole goal of helping them, like the lady that I met who said, I heard the commercial over the radio, and so I came. So I turned to my interpreter and said, are you going to hook her up with the pastor? Because, here's a soul. That's the whole reason for this. And so she was really, she said, yeah, I'm planning on it. And then later we were able to, they found out her address, and which I don't know how they found anybody's houses, because there were no road signs. It was like, where are we going? And, well, you turn left at the Rock, and I don't. It was pretty amazing.
I've learned not to try to understand traffic or the road systems, and just go with the flow.
Oh my word!
It'll be fine.
But I wanted one of the really, for me, powerful moments was the church. They had something going just all the time. We were there at it was incredible. So they had their Bible Institute graduation that week. So we had to watch that, and it was just really precious. And then they had the ESL camp. And then on Saturday they had like a day youth,
2-day, actually 3-day
young adult outreach.
Young adult conference.
It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Oh,
what timing?
Oh my! And we'll show you later.
We were a part of that too.
Our kids did sumo wrestling outfits. I think Morgan did one.
You did one, right?
I didn't put that picture up for you, Morgan, but
big sumo suit.
Oh, good. We have a couple of those. Maybe we can get those out for a student body, and you can show the whole.
Here's Morgan.
Yeah.
I think one time was enough, to be honest, but
You got nothing left to prove.
But they kept singing the song, over and almost at every service, they kept singing the song that was by Majesty, the Hamiltons, God of Wonders. And it was, the first time I heard it, I thought, I know this song, but of course you're hearing it in Spanish, and it's beautiful. So I did what you did, and I'm whipping open my phone, like, what are the words? And then, you hear it again, and it's just so precious. And then we took a trip down that Sumidero Canyon, which is magnificent, and you can't see that without knowing there's a creator, because this grandeur did not just happen. But when I looked up the words, and I won't read all of them, but some of them, through every generation his wonders are displayed, from forming all creation to seeing those enslaved. God of wonders, who reigns victorious, God of wonders, enthroned in grace, all earth trembles before his presence. God of wonders, the Ancient of Days. And you just kept hearing them sing it and hearing them sing it. And I came back and I would play that song. And now I just know that whenever I hear this song, I'm going to be thinking of Mexico.
Sure.
And it's going to be so special. I played it yesterday and I teared up because the words of the song are so powerful. But hearing them sing it and knowing we're all worshiping the same God together. And that was very powerful.
And when we stand before the throne someday, it's every tribe and every tongue.
Every tribe and every tongue.
And
from the ends
every
of the
time.
earth.
Yeah. And so imagine the unity there.
It's going to be thrilling.
Amongst all that diversity. Yeah. And so I think there's always something like that the Lord just grabs a hold of us. And we go to serve, but yet oftentimes come back feeling that we've been served or that we have benefited more than those that we went to try and be a benefit to. Yeah. Did you feel that way?
I did.
Yeah. So those evening things, were you with Dr. Morris or Mrs. Morris?
We switched around.
Oh, okay.
Some of the evenings there would be a kids class, so some of us students would be in charge of that. And then we would switch around, and I was in both of their classes.
Nice.
We wanted them to get a flavor of every age, every ability, because I don't know where God's going to call them. And so some of them would come back to me and go, I love this age, I love this ability set. And I do think God can call you specifically. So we wanted them to taste all of those experiences and then enjoy. They
were very hungry learners.
Yes.
They really wanted to learn, and that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's really enjoyable. It's easy to teach someone who's hungry to learn.
Like every Maranatha student in
absolutely,
every class.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Until they get to business law, where there's a switch that just goes off. I don't know what happens.
That's good.
So your trip was intended to be how long?
Well,
shorter than it was.
Right.
Not everything goes like clockwork.
Those last couple of days, we could enjoy a few things. We went out to a nice buffet, and we enjoyed Irma's ice cream a few times, right? That was pretty special. And so we were coming down to the end of it. Well, when you're involved in ministry like this, and it's all new and you're meeting people, you're not checking the news.
Okay, right.
Well, had I been checking the news, I would have known that up in Mexico City, there's this large volcano called El Popo. And El Popo started erupting by the Wednesday of the week that we were there.
We were just too busy.
We were too busy. We were having a great time and enjoying everything.
Nobody was talking about it or anything?
Right.
This is normal.
Because they're so far south.
Okay.
Yeah, we were much further south. And so our day of departure came. My brother hadn't been checking
he was busy.
Anything that was going on in the news. We show up
we got up at 2, 3 a.m. It was early.
Way too early.
Yeah, no kidding.
We show up at the airport.
It's not the morning yet. That's what I always feel like.
Yeah. And
we kept saying to the students, it's
very
okay,
obvious.
you'll sleep on the plane. We're okay. We're getting up early, but we're going to sleep on the plane. We're good.
It was
But they
very
did not
obvious
sleep on
that
the
something
plane.
was wrong.
Right away.
Based
When you got to the airport.
Yeah.
You got all the way to the airport.
Oh, yeah,
before
we
you
got all
realized
our
something was
luggage.
wrong.
Line.
Oh, my goodness.
And, that's 20 bags of luggage and students and all of us. And we're working on the language
Passports,
barrier. Passports, right.
Now, fortunately, the missionary had said, I'm going to go in with you. I'm not just going to drop you off. I'm going to see you guys through. That was huge.
Right. So based upon how the workers were not helping people.
No eye contact.
Right.
No eye contact.
And then how they all kind of exited. And then
Hello.
several of us are standing there like, what do we do now? And then some new workers came in. It came about to be that, okay, the volcano's going off in Mexico City. You can't fly planes in that atmosphere because volcanic ash will tear apart engines and planes. They'll crash.
And our flight was Tuxtla to Mexico City,
right.
And then Mexico City.
So that's why it
that
was
was
really
the
messing
connecting
you up.
flight, and that's why we couldn't get out. And so some people had actually been there. This was their third day in a row to see if they could get into Mexico City.
I was in Kyrgyzstan when this was happening, getting text messages from you about a volcano going off in Mexico. And I'm like, we have many contingency plans. I did not have one for volcano going off in the country. And so I'm thinking, oh my goodness,
I
we got to
apologize for
scramble.
not checking the volcano forecast.
Thanks a lot.
I just
man.
want you to know that.
You know, we have to add, this is how new rules come about. You wonder how we get new rules.
This
This
will
is
be
how
the
we
Morgan
get new
rule.
rules.
This
Yeah,
will be the
right.
Morgan rule.
Thanks a lot, Morgan.
Morgan has something.
Pay
So
attention for crying
Morgan,
out loud.
what did you guys end up doing that whole morning?
We sat down and played card games and slept on the airport floor.
Oh, how comfortable that must have
And
been.
it was
And the missionary's wife told me, okay, this is unusual. And I'm thinking, I'm so proud of our students. You know, they're just handling this so well. And she said, around here, nobody sits on the floor. So the fact that your whole crew is sitting on the floor is unusual. So I started looking around and I thought, wow, everybody in line. And we had been in line 3 hours at this point. Nobody in line was sitting down. Now in America, we would just comfortably sit. No, everyone was standing.
What do they know that you guys didn't know? That's what I'd be worried about.
Right? Well, I started looking around. Morgan, I don't know if you realize this. And I noticed a security guard came and stood to the right of our group. And a little bit later, a security guard came and stood to the left of our group.
Really?
And then a security guard came and stood behind us. And I just thought, perfect. My students are safe. We got security guards surrounding us. I'm sure that's not why they're here. But I was happy. I really was. I was like, good.
I
We're
turn
good.
around and look back, and there's our kids, and they're surrounded by security.
About to be taken
they're
into
okay.
custody or what?
Yeah, God
Oh, man.
works in unusual ways. He really
Yikes.
does. And that was
Okay.
day one.
Okay, now.
Day one.
All right, yeah, right. All right,
That's
now.
foreboding.
Now, you got to listen to my wife's story because she is somewhat directionally challenged.
Okay.
As we
She
know.
will use
yes.
her GPS in Watertown.
I do. I get lost in Watertown.
She's lived here for 30 years.
We do have road signs here, you know. You don't have that
They
same
don't make
problem.
sense.
She sees a map.
This is
Here we go.
He's setting it up because this is so the Lord. I'm not kidding. It's so the Lord. So we're sitting there, and I am back and forth between my husband, who's way at the front of the line, and we've now just gone to the back of the airport, surrounded by security, with the students and all our luggage. And I happen to look up, and here's a big map of Mexico. I am not, I'm not a history major, and I'm just looking at this map, and I'm like, I wonder, where are we? And we were 45 minutes from the southern border. I'm thinking, where's Mexico City? So I'm just kind of looking at this map, trying to figure all this out. And I think they have literally worked with us for 3 hours. The airport. Nobody but our group. This one lady
Just trying to figure it out.
just tried to get
change
us
her
out of there.
tickets.
She was focused on our group. It was such a blessing. And I'm just looking there, and I thought, see, I already forgot.
Cancun.
There's Cancun on the map. And I thought, because we had a neighbor years ago, like 20 years ago, who had done a destination wedding trip for like a niece or something. Mm-hmm. And I thought, people fly in and out of Cancun. Now, I'm geographically inept. You have to understand this. This is so the Lord. So Dwayne comes up, and I'm looking at this.
Dana and I did it last year. So, yes, people do fly in and out of Cancun, for crying out loud.
I don't even know. And I pull him over, and I'm like, look at this map. I just wonder, could we, instead of going through Mexico City, could we go Cancun and up? I mean, and of course his initial thought is, you don't understand directions. You know,
well, obviously,
thank
he's
you.
going to be very dismissive of your suggestions at this
I
point. You
don't
think they haven't thought of that?
From the person who can't find Main Street.
It's true. Why would I be the one to listen to in this moment? It was true.
They hadn't thought of that, evidently.
No.
Oh.
No. They were still trying to get us through Mexico City. Which wasn't going to happen.
It'd be like O'Hare shutting down.
For a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So initially they told us 6 days.
Ugh.
You're going to be here 6 days.
And I thought, there's no way.
I don't think we told you that.
You guys told me that, and I'm thinking, how much is that going to cost?
Yeah, right.
And I was thinking, we just had this fabulous missions trip, this wonderful experience, and I fear that the flavor left in our students' mouths is going to be this extended time of nothing.
Like volcanic ash.
Yeah. In your mouth.
I just was like, oh, man.
So I looked at the map as well and thought, well, that's something. And I asked my brother, and he said, yes, there's another airline right over here, different airline, and they do fly to Cancun. And I thought, I wonder if that would work. So later that day, we decided to take you all to the mall. You had a great time at the mall, right?
Just what you wanted to do, a trip to the mall after getting up at 2 in the morning.
Right? We bought them
We
ice
slept
cream.
there too.
Okay.
My philosophy is bribe them with food.
Yeah, for
Did
sure.
you enjoy the mall?
Yeah.
Did you do anything in particular in the mall?
We
no, I
bought
can't
snacks.
think. We shopped.
We
Yeah,
bought
got drinks
snacks.
and snacks.
Got snacks.
Cheez-Its.
We went to the mall because there was another outlet there for Aeromexico. And I thought, if I can talk to somebody there, maybe they're at like a travel agent, they could help us maybe a little better.
Okay.
And we thought we were so close to getting it.
And so, again, we had one single agent. God was so kind, and she just worked with us. And she was just in 3 hours. We were with her. So the team is kind of, we knew they were safe when we had 2 translators with them, and they were kind of.
And they could enjoy the mall. It was better than the airport.
Yeah, certainly.
But 3 hours, this agent is working with us. And finally she said, I think I've got it. And she was plugging in. And, of course, you have to do everything with passports and passport numbers.
You got 10 people or more. And it's like, oh, boy.
So we get all the way, and then it was, well, if I could send like 3 in 3 groups. Well, there's no way we're leaving any of our students. We kept saying, if
we don't do that anymore
no,
after that one time.
No. We said, if you can do 2 groups, like I could take a group and Dwayne could take a group, but no way are we doing 3.
No, we're not doing 3.
No way am I leaving these students.
All right, Ben, you're in charge of this 3rd group.
Just like,
Good luck.
and she
Put
kind of,
Morgan in charge.
Okay, that actually
better.
makes more sense.
the agent struggled with that. She just could not understand why we wouldn't just split into 3 groups. And we're like, no. So finally she said, she was this close, and she said, and she ordered. She had
Tickets.
9 tickets done, and the last 2 got scooped up. And she said, I just lost them. And it was, so that was day 2 of being stuck.
Right. So that was day 1 at the later on in the day. So that's when I got on the phone, started calling the folks here at Maranatha, and I just brought up, what about the possibility of looking for tickets on a different airline, go to Cancun and then transfer in Cancun, and then complete the flight that way. And so Carrie Meyer is the one we were working with. And
Maranatha was fabulous.
yeah, they really were.
Fabulous.
They really were. And so I said, Carrie, I'll look for the Cancun flights. You work on the flights for going out of Cancun and getting back. And together, the 2 of us, we got it.
The last thing the ticket agent at the mall said to us, I just looked at her and said, and I have to admit, I started to get a little exasperated, and I stopped. I said, ma'am, I am sorry. You are doing your job. I'm sorry. And I said, because the whole reason we're here, and I invited her to church. I thought, Lord, maybe this is what it's all about. It was, so we invited her to church. But the last thing I said to her was, what do you suggest? I mean, at this point, 6 days. We're going to be stranded 6 days. And she said, try to figure it out on your own. And I'm thinking, if you can't,
Yeah, what
and
hope
if
do
the
I have?
airport can't, how on earth is it going to work for us to go look?
Yeah.
But God is in the details. He is
Well,
in the
and I'm really thankful you were there. We're in your brother's hometown,
Yes.
because at one point you were
Yes.
saying, well, maybe they're going to put us on a bus to Mexico City where we waited out, and you didn't have anybody there
Right.
that would have been supportive,
Right.
and transportation
Listen,
and everything else.
I was trying to be creative. I thought, wow, if I could get to Cancun, there's always swimming.
Yeah,
Or
it wouldn't.
maybe
If you
kayaking.
got to be
Kayaking back to
stuck,
the States.
it's
Then
better to be stuck in
Right.
Cancun
I-
than in.
And then I thought about
volcanic
surely
Mexico
there's a
City.
cruise ship in Cancun, and we could just cruise up to Galveston and then see our daughter in Galveston. And
You had it
I
all
thought,
worked
hey,
out.
Matt can foot the
Well,
bill for this.
and you are alluding
Thank you,
to the
Dr.
fact,
Davis.
but yeah,
So
we have good insurance for trips
were
like
able to
this. Thank you very
secure
much.
tickets online
Yeah.
on the other airline to Cancun, and then fly from Cancun and get back.
But even
And so it worked out.
Cancun, remember?
And then
we were there.
Cancun.
We were there, what, 6 hours? So we landed. Well, maybe we were there 7 hours, but we landed. We stayed in a parking lot for like an hour as we're trying. But there was a pastor there who picked us up, drove us to
Wow.
our hotel. I mean, just God was in every single detail. The next morning, it was another one. We were up again at like, what, 3, 4 a.m. He came back, picked us up,
Right.
took us to the airport. And he only had one vehicle, so he took half of the group.
Oh,
Came back. I mean, he was so precious. Again, it's a small world when Christ is involved.
That pastor knew one of our students,
Missouri.
Zuri. He also knew my brother.
oh, yeah.
And so
It was just,
God
brought us
completely
home.
worked that out.
God brought us home. And you know,
And
that ended up
Cancun was not fun at all.
Not this time.
No, I can say I've been in Cancun, but I didn't even do anything. Sat on the sidewalk.
It was dark.
Yeah.
We went on
It
the
is a nice
freeway,
airport, though.
The pastor was nice, so it was
Yeah.
worth it.
Oh, it's good.
And
But you made it home, and it didn't take the 6 extra days, just a couple more.
online, it was going to be maybe a 3-star hotel. It ended up being pretty much a 1-star hotel.
Depending on whose star rating you're using, you know.
Right. We found a Subway sub shop, and we got some dinner, and the next morning early we were off on our flight. So
Well, praise
God
the Lord.
worked it out.
And I'm glad you made it back, and then you immediately jetted off again and didn't let any moss grow under your feet, I know.
No.
And there's more to that story too. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. I guess my last question, Morgan, to you is, as you think about this and having been home now for a few weeks, what does your mind keep going back to as sort of your lessons learned or your big takeaway that God taught you through the trip?
Well, we had all these things going on, the ESL and the outreaches, and we were going places. But there were quiet moments when you really got to meet the people. You got to talk to the members. You got to talk to the different people from the church plants. And really they just, many of them were going through personal struggles. And even as a church, the church is going through together opposition from their own officials there. But they're just so joyful. And they have all these things going on, and it is hard, but they just love the Lord and they love each other. And it really is the joy of the Lord is my strength. They embody that down there. And it was just a testimony to be with those people, just to see them, how they live, the way that they love the Lord.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for sharing. And, we'll do it again sometime, right?
Thank you. Listen, your support for this is what makes it happen. And we're so thankful for the university.
Yeah.
Global Encounters,
Yeah.
we're incredibly grateful for them and Steve Love and the leadership there.
Yeah.
We're so grateful for the people that gave,
Yeah. Lots of people.
that gave toward our students so that they could do this. Very grateful for that. And then we just thank the Lord. What an incredible opportunity. And to be a shot in the arm to a ministry that's really doing a great work.
Absolutely.
And that was just a thrill.
I'm
So I
thankful for
want to
your
make
brother.
sure you understand how thankful we are for you.
Well, praise the Lord. And it's a lot of people over a lot of years that have given towards that work and that see the value of it, not only in what's accomplished overseas, but what's accomplished in our own hearts, lives of our students, as they take this on as a life experience that won't be the last, I'm sure,
right.
and help them to connect in with global missions.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's it for this episode, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for joining us today. On Mission is a production of Maranatha Baptist University. Subscribe to On Mission on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review, as this will help other growing leaders find these conversations. For information about our guests, previous episodes, and general information about On Mission or MBU, go to mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.